What the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
When 16-year-old Aiden Chase first got into hockey, he never expected he'd be called the N-word on multiple occasions. But now he's calling for change.
We want change, not just to single out a single person. We want change in Hockey Quebec's system, and not even just Hockey Quebec, but all sports.
After years on the job, some blue-collar employees say their work is made even more difficult by the insults they've heard from colleagues.
They're saying because of your ethnical origin, your food that you put in the microwave smell like shit.
I'm hired myself to eat a banana because I know those jokes going to come at me.
Because he's Muslim, he's Arab, that's why he's taking Friday off to go pray. This is the kind of joke they crack.
Well, the CAQ government has steadfastly refused to admit that there is systemic racism in Quebec, preferring instead to tackle the issue of racism more broadly.
The tribunal ruled that Mike Wards did not poke fun at Jérémy Gabriel because of his disabilities, but because he was a public personality. Jérémy Gabriel was born with the Treacher-Collins syndrome, which creates a malfunction of the cranium coupled with deafness.
A black family is alleging racial profiling on the part of Air Canada. It happened during a trip in July. The family says they were removed from a flight for inquiring about their luggage.
What's very disappointing of this sampling of stories involving racism and discrimination here in Quebec is that when I asked Dario De Felice, who's at Master Control, to compile this today, he didn't have any trouble finding these stories. There are a lot of them. And there are a lot of them in 2023, 2022, 2021. And last year at the same time, I was having conversations about racism and social justice with the late Egbert Gay. And I want to take this moment to remember Egbert and send my thoughts to Egbert's family and friends. He's sorely missed. I miss him desperately. I love to discuss these themes with him. But also last year, I had the pleasure of speaking with Alain Babineau, who's the Director of Racial Profiling and Public Safety at the Red Coalition, and he's in studio with me now. Alain, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me, David.
And so what the idea here is that, a year has gone by. 2023 is almost over. We've spoken, obviously, since October 7th, the focus has been more on anti-Semitism and even Islamophobia since the attacks of October 7th. But we have been speaking a lot also about racism here in Montreal, in the city, and beyond across the province. How would you qualify the situation? I just would call it generally hate. The situation, it's based on hate and ignorance, basically. But what's the situation from your vantage point? Because the Red Coalition has been set up to denounce, to fight these injustices that are linked to racism. So what's the situation as you see it right now?
Well, I don't think racism is going anywhere anytime soon. I think racism is here. It's permanent. I mean, it's part of the fabric of this society, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. I mean, the idea is resistance. How much do we resist, and what do we do to resist? Not only hate propaganda, but also systemic, would it be policies, laws, and procedures that have been, sometimes put forth by the government that really affect disproportionately segments of our society.
Let's start with the city of Montreal itself. There have been a lot of incidents, a lot of accusations, even within the city itself. I mean, there seems to be, there have been allegations, very strong allegations, almost institutional systemic racism within the city of Montreal. Where is that file, and what's your position on that?
Well, there hasn't been a whole lot of improvement within the city of Montreal. Matter of fact, I think it's gone even worse. And the reason for that is very simple, is because, with the idea of diversity and inclusion is scaring a lot of people that feel that their privilege is being, put in jeopardy. and also the lack of action by the municipal institution, and I will say the Anti-Racism Bureau, which is really not scaring anybody anymore.
Is that Bush Ramonai's
That's correct.
department? Mm-hmm. Okay, who's taken a lot of heat since October 7th. But on the anti-racism front, do you feel she's done anything concrete to fight racism within the city?
Well, there's no trust. There's no confidence in the Bureau, and it's not her personally.
Okay.
I mean, albeit she's at the helm, so she has to take some of the responsibilities. But at the end of the day, first of all, the Bureau was created not to increase, diversity and inclusion and vivre ensemble and all of that, but to fight racism. Right. So that's the name of the Bureau.
That is the name of the Bureau. That's her title.
That's the title. So you got to put it in the perspective. The Bureau was created with 4 staff members, right? Myself, that was assigned for the issue of racial profiling. There was a person in charge of HR. Any type of discrimination and racism within the HR processes, and there was a admin assistant to the commissioner. So there was 4 of us. If you compare that to the Bureau of Diversity and Inclusion, which existed prior to the creation of the Anti-Racism Bureau, there's over 100 people.
Wow. So over 100 to 4.
Yeah. So
including one admin.
So exactly.
Yeah.
So that sort of sums it up in terms of the priorities of the administration.
Are you still on staff? No, you left, right?
No, I left after a year, and we parted ways because I was in there to fight racism and discrimination, and you can't really. I have this little thing about you can't talk about diversity and inclusion when there's racism and discrimination. And what has happened over the last since I left, actually, a lot of people have turned to me. And the Red Coalition to advance their claims within the city because they didn't see any traction, you see, and the trust is completely gone.
All right. We'll continue our conversation with Alain Babineau of the Red Coalition after we take a break for your CTV News Update with Tom Whalen. Welcome back. David Heurtel with you. I'm joined in studio by Alain Babineau, Director of Racial Profiling and Public Safety at the Red Coalition. When we left off, Alain, you sounded ultimately discouraged about the way the city is handling the issue of racism. Nothing concrete is being done. Let's move to the police, the SPVM, the SQ. I mean, one big issue that everybody was talking about a year ago was body cams. Remember? I mean, I mean, almost every other day.
Exactly.
We were talking about the importance of body cams, and there was a pilot project, and body cams were going to be everywhere and going to help out for cases. What's going on?
Well, body cams was a really politically palatable issue 2 years ago, and prior to the elections, the municipal elections, and the SQ, and of course the municipal administration was kind of passing the buck to the provincial on that matter, and the SQ did a 1-year experiment and came out with a report which basically said that yes, body cameras should be issued to all police services in this province. That was there was other things in that report, but essentially that's what it was decided, or it was recommended. Since then, very little has been heard from either the administration, the municipal administration, and the police. And there's question of finance or funding with respect to. There's also a question of data management. In terms of evidence. But funnily enough, a couple of weeks ago, the Association Directeur de Police de Québec and all the chiefs of police in this province basically issued a statement asking for body cams. And the reason for that is from their perspective, is saying that there's been an 8% increase in terms of assault of police officers in the province, and therefore they need those body cameras to protect themselves. That's kind of ironic, if you think of it for a minute. But that's where it's at. But there hasn't been any kind of movement.
So there's $500 million for bike paths in the city of Montreal, but there's no money for body cams.
There's no money for body cams.
Okay, so have you been in touch? Have you had discussions with Fadi Daguerre about this or the issues of racial profiling? Because he's been very vocal.
Right.
About fighting racial profiling. He came out, he was very candid saying, yes, I was for racial profiling and now I'm against it, and I want to reduce it. I don't want to rely on it anymore. Have you had exchanges with him? Have you had discussions? Have there been any concrete moves from the police under Fadi Daguerre to reduce the recourse to racial profiling?
Not a whole lot. I mean, we've had conversations, and I think he realizes the impact of racial profiling. But at the same time, he said that the interpellation and street checks should continue on.
Yeah.
And he rejected a moratorium on street checks, saying that he needs to target the culture or the organization, which is true. But at the same time, street checks and interpellation are still going on, and which are illegal, by the way, and been deemed illegal everywhere in this country except, of course, this province. But and I understand that they're working on some type of racial profiling program at the SPVM right now, which will include some training and so on.
But there was a big decision by the Superior Court. Remember the Heurtel decision?
The Heurtel decision was on traffic stops.
Yeah.
It's the Article 636 and the common law authority for police officers to randomly stop vehicles. That's one thing. And of course, even Director Daguerre said, well, we need Article 636 to continue doing those random stops. Of course, this will go all the way to the Supreme Court, and I strongly believe the Heurtel decision will be upheld. But we're talking about street stops, pedestrian stops, which have no basis in law. The common law doesn't authorize that at all. There's a legal opinion from a Superior Court justice in Nova Scotia that basically said there's no law in place, either in Nova Scotia, but in Quebec, there's no law in place that authorizes street stops or pedestrian stops. And the common law doesn't justify it because it's not reasonable for the police officers to do their job. There's no stats, there's nothing that's been put forward by organizations, either the anecdotal, stories, and so it's illegal.
No, it's incredible. I have friends. I mean, I've been driving a car. I've had a license since I've been 16, for 36 years. Never once have I been stopped by a cop asking me if I own the car I was driving.
Exactly.
And I have black friends who tell me that, it's almost common. It's 8-10 times in their lives. It's routine. And they're just randomly asked, well, do you own this car? Yeah. It's absurd, and it's still allowed and accepted. So right now, the way you see things, are we at least heading in the right direction? Is there any type of progress you can report?
Well, no, there's no progress at all. As a matter of fact, that the government, in my opinion, has emboldened police officers to carry on as if everything was normal. And until the Supreme Court rules on the issue and sends it back, by the way, the Supreme Court is going to say, no, the Heurtel decision needs to be upheld, and then they're going to send it back to the province to legislate and to pass a regulation, regulating.
Circumscribing.
Yeah, I was going to
there it is. I know.
I didn't want to use the other term that the people said, but until that's regulated, it's going to carry on as if it was normal. And it's, and there's also psychological detention. Black folks and racialized folks, when approached by a police officer, they feel automatically detained. And the court has said, if you feel psychologically detained, you're triggered, your 10B charter rights are triggered. Yeah. So folks are being illegally detained in an interpellation. It's very serious stuff.
Moving on, I think it was last year. Correct me, or maybe it was 2 years ago. I forget. I was filling in, and this was a horrible incident. It was during the Christmas weekend.
Last year. Right?
Last year. It was last year during Christmas weekend. A young black man was detained. And he died in jail, and we found out that he was supposed to be released. He was illegally detained. Yeah. He had gotten his bail, and he was supposed to be detained. And because the official explanation was a staffing issue, he was detained until the next day, and he died in jail. And we kind of talked about it at the time. And talked a lot about investigations and whatnot, but I haven't heard a lot since. Can you tell us more? Remind us the name of this individual who died and what has happened since.
It was Nico Spring.
Spring,
young man, and Yeah, it was an administrative snafu, really, that occurred at Bordeaux jail, there where he was detained, Christmas Eve, and then got upset, and then they got into an altercation with the guards and whatnot, and they used some very, very questionable procedures and whatnot, and he passed away. Immediately, the Red Coalition, we had a press conference, I believe it was on January the 7th, where we asked for the release of video footage,
in the jail,
in the jail automatically, so that the family and also the population be aware of what exactly happened. That never happened. We also asked for a public investigation by the coroner. The coroner's investigation, but public investigation, so that at least people can weigh in, come in, make it transparent. About a month later, the government agreed that there would be a public inquest by the coroners. Well, I haven't heard a thing on that public inquest after that. And thirdly, the coalition went further and filed a request with the Protecteur du Citoyen, which is the ombudsman for the correctional services, asking for a systemic investigation on discrimination within the detention centers in the province, because we uncovered that this was not a unique case in terms of people of either racialized or allophones dying in the detention center, and also racism generally amongst the staff and so on in the province. So we sort of based our request upon the federal ombudsman's report that called out anti-black racism was rampant within the federal institution. And we said, well, if that's bad at the federal level, and typically it's worse at the provincial level on all other aspects, so we want you to go in and investigate. It's been close to a year now, and we went from the Protecteur du Citoyen. We had some meetings. We had some meeting with the president of the Quebec Human Rights Commission, and the file was transferred over to the Quebec Human Rights Commission because there's a procedure within the charter that allows that to happen, and we agreed to it. And it's in their hands for evaluation as to whether or not they're going to conduct a systemic investigation. And so, it's disappointing that it's taken so long on such an important issue, because we've had other reports on discrimination and racism within detention centers. And the government seems to be, unfortunately, not the government, the institution that's supposed to be there as a watchdog seems to be taking its time. I understand it's a complex thing, but at the same time, there's a sense of urgency that's not there.
Well, a man died in jail.
Exactly.
I mean, that's period. I mean, we should have answers a year from that incident. I mean, I just don't get it. I got to end soon, Alain. So when I hear these things, I mean, we have a minister for the fight against racism. His name is Christopher Skeet. He's in the Legault government. What has this government done in the last year to fight racism?
Not much, if anything. The Red Coalition has been CC'd, Mr. Skeets and his office, on pretty much every single case of racism. We had a case, we just had a press conference yesterday morning on an issue in Terrebonne where 4 young black ladies were attacked by a white man, a mask, with a ski mask, carrying a knife and an axe. Okay, and it took a month for the investigation to unfold. And when the coalition got engaged, we sent a letter to all, police chief, the mayor, Mr. Skeet, Mr. Bonardel. And to date, we haven't heard a peep from the Skeet's office in terms of, yes, we're going to look into this. So there's never any kind of reply. We're not asking full-fledged investigation every single time that we call his name, but he has a responsibility. In my opinion, it's a position that unfortunately is important, but at the same time, I think it's just a figure de proue that's been
a figurehead.
A figurehead that's been put there to. I understand they challenged the meaning of Christmas. They filed a complaint against the Canadian Human Rights. I mean, stuff that is really, I'm not saying it's not important, but when you have those kind of hate crime or hate incident that is happening and the minister is not even saying anything, it's very troubling. Would rather not have anybody.
I wish I could end on a more hopeful note, but I think these issues have to be discussed, and we have to talk about them and continue to talk about them. Alain Babineau, thank you for coming in.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for the work and continuing to fight for.
Well, that's the hope. That is the hope. We got to keep on keeping on.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, and the whole team at the Red Coalition. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Happy holidays, regardless.
Yes.
Alain Babineau, Director of Racial Profiling and Public Safety at the Red Coalition.